I said, what does that mean? They went, you're going to have to inject insulin. I said, how often? They went, at least 5 times a day. I then said, for how long? They went, the rest of your life. And I said, what happens if I don't? And they say, you'll die. You won't survive.
I just want to talk a bit about you're an ambassador for type 1 diabetes.
JDRF, yeah. So right. JDRF is the biggest type 1 diabetic charity in the UK. So yeah, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So got diagnosed about 8-9 years ago now. And
how old were you then?
Was I 29 then? So late 20s then. 29, around that sort of age anyway. Yeah. But long story short, I was quite unwell very quickly, and bizarrely I'd went for full blood tests about 6 months earlier for something else, and one of them they took was my blood glucose reading, and it was fine. Then I became ill really quickly. I went to see a doctor, and part of it, because I was really gaunt, my face was really ill.
What was this this period of you getting poorly? What was the time?
Well, it wasn't poorly. I was just not myself and very going to the toilet a lot, very thin, lost a lot of weight. Like I was yellow, pale in the face. I looked back at photos and I looked ill rather than being, a sore stomach or headache or anything. I was just ill. So 6 months earlier I was fine. I think I had some food poisoning they did some blood tests for. And anyway, my blood sugar was one of a lot of metrics they measured. It was fine. Went to this doctor then a little while later. They did my blood sugar. And for anyone that doesn't know, if you're a non-diabetic, your blood sugar range will usually be between 4 and 7. Mine was 33, so it was like off the scale. Really ill. Got told you need to go to the hospital now. Was in an ambulance. Got there, and it was the worrying thing. Actually, was looking at the paramedic's face and them looking at each other. And then when I got to hospital, and a couple of days later, when I was, in the recovery stage, they did say you're a week away from a coma here with how high your blood sugar is. So I went in, and then I'd been in hospital for various things before, sort of minor things, wisdom teeth or sprained ankle or whatever. And I always looked at it where you go in, you have a treatment and you get better and you leave. This was so different to me mentally, because I went in and after 4 days, they put me on a glucose and insulin drip for 4 days overnight, and they checked my blood sugar, woke me up every 2 hours in the night and in the day to check my blood sugar, so they knew what was up with me and what level I'd need to be on. Coming after 3 days when you can go home, I go, brilliant, that's it, I can go home. I go, can I ask what the situation is? I remember this so vividly, like it was yesterday, right? I asked 4 questions. I said, so what's up with me? They went, you're a type 1 diabetic, which I thought of knew from the previous days, but I didn't know what that meant. I said, what does that mean? They went, you're going to have to inject insulin. I said, how often? They went, at least 5 times a day. I then said, for how long? They went, the rest of your life. And I said, what happens if I don't? And they say, you'll die. You won't survive. So then I was like, wow, it was sort of massively information overload, but information you need. And then the difficulty with type 1, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend, it's the worst luck in the world. I've got the worst condition. There's loads of people worse off than me. There's loads of conditions that are worse. The difficulty is the management of it. So we have to, any meal I ever eat, I have to carb count and give myself a level of insulin based on the carb that you have. When you eat bread with Marmite this morning, for instance, the carb count is on the loaf. So I know for every 15 grams, it's a unit. There's 30 grams in a Hovis, 2 slices. That's 2 units that I inject. Every time I go out for a meal. So today, my biggest stress coming on the Happy Hour podcast is, are my blood sugars okay before? Have I kept my insulin at a room temperature because I'm in a bag? It's 20 degrees outside. I need to bring food with me that's got the carb count on. If you said, do you want to go to the pub after this? I would probably say, can I eat my food first before eating pub food? Because I don't know the carb count ratio of the chips that they use compared to other chips, for instance. So it is a minefield in terms of mentally how much you have to do. And I inject 5 times a day at least. I have to order medication. I have to have sugar on me. I've got sugar in my pocket now. I've got insulin there. I have to maintain the temperature of the insulin. So it is a 24/7 job, if you like. Yeah. And the hardest thing for me was, there's a bit of misconception with being type 1 diabetic. People go, oh, I can't believe you've got to inject. That must be really hard, putting a needle in you. Like, I've never, from day one, had a problem with putting a needle in me at all. I've never been scared of that. And each their own, some people might. It's the mental burden that is incredible. And I'm not afraid to admit it, but I was at the time. My mental health, plummeted, mate. Like the first 2 years, I would be crying myself to sleep. I would be, ringing my mum and my wife were here. I had some very bad thoughts, and I was in a very dark place then because it was such a mental burden. So all the physical side of learning how to carb count, I went on a Daphne course, which is a week-long dose adjustment for healthy normal eating, and you learn about the carb ratio in every food. All of that side, I was like, it's a bit of a ball ache learning all this, and every day is is stressful and a new challenge, but I can get on board with that. It was the mental side of going to bed not knowing if your blood sugars are going to crash, like doing an interview. The biggest stress over anything I do in my life now is what my blood sugar is going to be. You saw me check it on the app that I've got now.
Yeah.
I had a sweet beforehand to make sure my bloods don't go. You know, I'll glance at my phone sometimes in an ad break to check they're there. So my mental health got so bad. I had dreadful anxiety brought on by my diagnosis. So I only told close family and friends.
Right.
I was very stressed that it would affect anything with work, and it didn't. Everyone at Sky was absolutely brilliant, by the way. But I thought, is this going to prevent me progressing because I've got this condition that someone else doesn't? And if there's two people going for something, might there be a perception that, well, he's got this condition, and that hasn't been the case, and everyone's been brilliant, but I didn't know that at the time. So I was getting such bad dizziness that I was going to see an ENT specialist. I went to have a brain scan because for the year or 2 years after, my dizziness was so bad I couldn't get on a train. I had to hold flights of stairs. So I was certain there was something wrong with my brain or something else wrong with me. Anyway, I had all these tests that came back normal. I then saw, I'm not afraid to admit, I had counselling and saw a psychologist, and they said the anxiety, the dizziness that you were experiencing and the vertigo was a direct result of the anxiety that I was suffering, which had been brought on by my diagnosis. Once I knew that, it was a huge weight lifted. And then I put a post out on social media, and since then and you do get a few sad in the time that you do get a few trolls and what's diabetes got to do with mental health and all this, and even though I think you're 45% more likely to have issues with your mental health if you have an autoimmune condition. I think something like that.
Yeah.
But you do get a few trolls, but generally speaking, the positivity I had was overwhelming. And I've had some of the deepest message I've ever received from randoms on social about mental health, diabetes, from parents of kids. And the biggest buzz that I get is the charity stuff I do, because I always felt when I was diagnosed that there was no one to turn to, and that was wrong. But, you know, I did something with Henry Slade recently. I'm not afraid to admit I'm not really a rugby fan. He is a type 1 diabetic that played in a World Cup final. For me, knowing that a type 1 diabetic can do that, Steve Redgrave won 5 gold medals.
Pavard.
I tell you who's got it is Nacho. Nacho has it.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
Nacho.
right.
So he's one of the most high profile footballers that has it. But knowing that someone, that it doesn't stop you doing anything was a big like buzz for me. So once I got comfortable with it and my mental health improved, I now just want to spread the word and I tell my story. I wouldn't have been able to say this. It's still quite difficult talking about the dark place I was in and my mental health battles and everything. But by doing that, if I can help one person, I think it's worth it, because by telling my story, I have a lot of people reaching out going, thank you for sharing this. There's a lot of kids that might know who I am as this Z-list celebrity that I am, this, you know, very little person and comparable to some of the names I've mentioned. But if they know who I am and see me on TV and YouTube and have type 1, and I've spoken to a lot of parents of stuff that have said, can you send a message? And what I want to do with that is make them think that nothing will stop you with that condition. Because when I was diagnosed, a big part of why my mental health was so bad was I thought a part of my life was over when I was diagnosed, and it wasn't, and it hasn't stopped me doing anything. I do look at my life in 2 parts, and I'd be lying if I said I'm anxious of people that can eat anything or don't have to check their bloods, or there's complications that, you know, needle might scratch in you. You might have, you know, I've got a part of my leg where I can't inject now because it's so yellow because I inject too much in one spot. There's times when your insulin doesn't work, you crash in the night and you know, my blood crashes and stuff like that. So it is a really stressful condition, but I've got to a point now where I'm very comfortable with it. I'm comfortable talking about it. And what I would say to anyone listening with that, it hasn't stopped me doing anything in my life, and it's probably made me a better person with it in a weird kind of way, because I've really known to appreciate. It was a really dark time. My nan passed away in a sort of similar 4-year period, and another family member was quite ill. I was in a really, really bad place, but it really gave me a perspective on what's important in life. Like, I used to think, it's Tottenham lose, it's the end of the world. I'm still a passionate football fan, but like it puts a lot into perspective when you go through stuff. And whenever I speak to people that have been through real hardships, a lot of them seem to have an amazing outlook on life and have a real perspective. So it has given me a real perspective of what's really important. And it's, I can't thank my wife and my mum and people, and I get emotional talking about it actually now, but
Mate, I just want to say as well, I know I came on your podcast you do with Calm, and I just want to say, like, a huge personal thank you from myself as well, because a couple of years ago my sister got diagnosed with type 1, and I came to Sky and I told you about it, and I don't even know if I knew you had it at this point. I can't remember how it came up, I can't remember, but I told you, and you went out of your way to get. And we've known each other a long time. We've not exactly been best mates, right?
No, we knew each other through social. I don't think we'd met before. Or anything like that.
Probably the first time we'd met.
Yeah.
I told you this. You got my sister's number. You called her up. You had an hour-long conversation with her when she was in a dark place as well. That was something that I can hold my hands up and admit. I don't think me and my family were there for her as much as we should have been because of the misconceptions around it, because we didn't understand. She recently told me years after now, I think she's diagnosed, she just had her anniversary of it. I think it's 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And she said that she was so depressed at the time because her whole life had changed. She thought she'd never get back to feeling as normal
Same as
she
me.
was. Yeah. And we weren't there for us. And I think all my family can admit that. We weren't there for her as much as we should have been because we thought, well, she's out of hospital now. She's on the mend, like you thought back then. Yeah. So personal thank you from me for going above and beyond to do that, because we live in this world where, rightly or wrongly, we can sit here, we can talk about mental health and how you need to talk about it and be there for people. The truth is, a lot of people like to say that to look good online, and I've probably been guilty of that in the past. How many people actually follow that up? But you are testament to it. You actually were there for her. I know you've helped her so much. The respect she has for you is unbelievable, because you're a famous person to her as well. So to go above and beyond, I just want to say thank you for that, mate. And the way you speak about it, your condition on the pod today, I think will help a lot of people. So
no, thanks. So how's your sister doing?
Yeah, she's doing really well, mate. She's doing really well. You told her about is it the Dexcom?
Yeah, Dexcom is a bit of kit that I use. It's amazing. So it's an app on your phone that gives you blood sugar every 5 minutes. So that's the good thing. Technology's come a long way, but it's a real passion of mine. It's like when it's interesting. You say what's the best thing in your career and all that, and it's, you know, doing all the interview and the TV is the biggest passion buzz that I get. But a lot of, you know, talking about mental health, which I struggle with, and type 1, I get a real buzz out of that. And if I can help one person, like I said, to make them feel better about the condition they're in, then that hits me differently, do you know?
Yeah, 100%. And even now, like, you'll check in with me and her and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you so much.
No,
mate.
Pleasure.